Let's pull another Hegseth up here and give this a listen real quick. Tell me if I've got audio.
Frankly, it's tiring to look out at combat formations, or really any formation, and see fat troops. Nice. Likewise, it's completely unacceptable to see fat generals and admirals in the halls of the Pentagon and leading commands around the country and the world. It's a bad look. It is bad, and it's not who we are. So whether you're an airborne ranger or a chairborne ranger, a brand new private or a 4-star general, you need to meet the height and weight standards and pass your PT test. And as the chairman said, yes, there is no PT test. But today, at my direction, every member of the Joint Force at every rank is required to take a PT test twice a year, as well as meet height and weight requirements.
That was the standard when I was in.
Yeah, it was when I left. A minimum of 2 PT tests a year.
Yeah. And at division, we did 4, just because it gave us something to do for PT one day every 3 months.
Yeah.
Pretty much. But yeah, it was twice a year period, and you had to meet height and weight. And anytime you came back from a school for some reason, 2nd Infantry would also height and weight you. I imagine that's because they thought you were eating out at Joe's Crab Shack every night after school when you got sent over.
Well, in the Army, you didn't have time for that.
Right.
Twice a year. Every year of service. Also today, at my direction, every warrior across our joint force is required to do PT every duty day. It should be common sense. I mean, most units do that already, but we're codifying it. And we're not talking like hot yoga and stretching. Real hard PT, there's either as a unit or as an individual. At every level, from the Joint Chiefs to everyone in this room to the youngest private, leaders set the standard. And so many of you do this already. Active, guard, and reserve.
Okay, right off the bat, if I was still an NCO, I would create an exercise called the hot yoga. Just so that we were doing the hot yoga.
This also means grooming standards. No more beards, long hair, superficial individual expression. We're going to cut our hair, shave our beards, and adhere to standards. Because it's like the broken windows theory of policing. It's like when you let the small stuff go, the big stuff eventually goes. So you have to address the small stuff. This is on duty, in the field, and in the rear. If you want a beard, you can join Special Forces. If not, then shave. We don't have a military full of Nordic pagans. But unfortunately, we have had leaders who either refuse to call BS and enforce standards, or leaders who felt like they were not allowed to enforce standards.
Here we go.
Both are
This is the important part.
Yeah.
And that's why today at my direction, the era of unprofessional appearance is over. No more beardos. The era of rampant and ridiculous shaving profiles is done.
Nice.
Simply put, if you do not meet the male level physical standards for combat positions, cannot pass a PT test, or don't want to shave and look professional, it's time for a new position or a new profession.
Dead nuts on. Look, when I was regular Army, which was for a little less than half of my time in, you shaved every day, period. I mean, we didn't think anything of it. Standards was standards.
Yep.
No, you were at school, you shined your fucking boots. You ironed your uniform. Now, when you got to a regular unit, you still shaved every day and you had to keep your hair cut and all that stuff. They didn't care so much about shiny boots. We had one platoon sergeant who said, "Are you wearing a uniform and are your boots black?"
Yep.
And that was it. But everything else was super high standard.
Now, when we were in garrison at the regiment, it was starch and spits.
Yeah.
That was it.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
You know, we'd be back at garrison not that often. We're usually either mobilized, training, or at a school. But when you're back in the rear, you go do your PT, you come out after chow, roughly 9 o'clock first formation, you are in starch and fucking spits.
Mm-hmm.
And then if you had to go to the motor pool or do something that would fuck your uniform up, you went upstairs, changed out of your starch and spits,
put on the other uniform,
put on the dirty uniform or the one you could destroy, and then go do your duty.
Yeah,
that's how it rolled.
It's 2nd Infantry. We had the same thing. You had a clean uniform and a dirty uniform. But the beard thing later on, when we started working with some of the special operations stuff, they'd give us like a week to start growing your shit up because you had to go somewhere as a civilian or anything. I got a bunch of pictures in jeans and t-shirts and like just a sweatshirt on or something like that and driving a civilian vehicle because that's what we were doing. But the second you came back, right to standards again. So it was a mission oriented.
Yeah.
But no standards at all is no standards at all, and you can't operate in a world like that. What were the grooming standards for you guys, Colonel?
Well, I was going to say the Air Force did not meet the starch and spits level like you guys were. I mean, we're always in our, our flight bags and everything.
Yeah.
But I totally.
You can't iron that.
What's that?
You can't iron that.
Oh, you'd look like major homo points if you did. But the Air Force, I mean, I totally 100% agree with the standards thing. I listened to Hegseth and I was like, absolutely. To me, what would really irritate me the most was like, you might see guys that were the biggest problem, you guys kind of alluded to it earlier, but like you'd have officers that they were all starched and spitzed and perfect in that regard, but they'd suck flying airplanes or they'd suck at doing the mission, doing real things. So for me, I think it's kind of a balance. I'm like, I want to see the standards on the mission and getting the mission done and doing it right. And so we can make guys who can survive in an airplane in all conditions. But I totally support the thing. I mean, my only area of disagreement, I was like thinking, I'm like, well, I like beards, but we can't wear beards as an airline pilot, because of the oxygen mask situation.
Yeah.
Which I don't
know. This is the same with us. If you can't get a seal, you're toast.
Yeah, you're done.
Yeah. Or, chem gear or pick your thing.
Yeah, you're absolutely correct.
So, but I totally agree with this message. I'm like, the only thing I would have maybe said different is I thought having a different thing for special ops to me, other than you pointed it out, 2-6, was the idea that, hey, you might have to be dressed as a civilian and you got to be able to blend in. I agree with that, but I feel like other special ops should meet the same standard. But
because of the intelligence work that we did, we'd go with signals and human intelligence working together on some missions. We would go into civilian areas where we didn't want to be seen as, oh my gosh, what are these army guys doing?
Right.
It was simply a matter of throwing flags. We weren't cool. We weren't special. They're never going to make a movie about any of the shit we ever did. We just needed to not attract attention.
Yeah, in the Ranger Regiment back in the day, you got a high and tight once every 10 days or so.
And that kind of issue started being an issue in the Air Force too. I mean, like when we were doing, I did some guard tanker deployments to, of all, you guys are going to hate me, Southern France a couple times.
Fuck you!
Fucking asshole.
Right? It was
the places we never ever got to go.
Anyway. But we were actually flying over Sarajevo and Yugoslavia right inside their SAM rings when we were doing stuff the whole time. So there was a little bit of pucker factor at times, but we weren't doing it at a time when war was going on for us. Later, we did it when we did the Operation Bomb Serbia stuff. But the thing was, we had to stay at dispersed hotels because you didn't want to stick out as a guard unit, like take over.
You want a cluster of U.S. military, and it attracts attention.
Yes. It's like, I could see where it would be good to be able to appear as civilians there, because we even though we were spread out, we would still stick out, as obviously Americans in Southern France would.
Yeah.
From any rural guard unit in the United States. But anyway, yeah, and I just wanted to echo what you guys said before. I mean, I absolutely think, and the vast majority of guys I worked with in the Air Force thought the same way about, as far as leading by example, doing all the exact same hard stuff that you'd expect your enlisted folks to do. And because of the way we operate, flying airplanes, it's like that's easy to do because the officers are doing the same training basically and more than the enlisted guys. So it's kind of a little different. There's another guy in our roundtable group that Chuck, that would be good to ask, because he had the Army warrant officer helicopter perspective on stuff. And, I think he would have a lot of insights to share from the Army officer side. But it's just yeah, it's what's that one the saying? How's that go? First in, last out.
Yep.
You know, that's how the officer should be, and do it the hardest. You know, be willing to take the hardest job, do the hardest thing, whatever it takes to lead by example. Absolutely.
Let's see if I can get this slides PDF image file. Hang on. I actually have a picture that is there it is. Oh, remove that one real fast. Add to stage 3. There. That's how we would operate. That was par for the course for us. That's the kind of civilian stuff that we would do. And you'll note that we don't have any weapons, we don't have any gear, none of that stuff. We just use it to traverse a civilian area and go set up somewhere that we needed to be to get stuff done. Well, and that was typical of what we did.
Yeah, I mean, I had very limited green beanie time.
Yeah.
So I think I did a total of between 12th group and 20th group, 5.5 years. But I always maintained a high and tight or a flat top. I never grew facial hair. That's just the way I rolled. I maintained myself in good physical.
Yeah, we had a lot of guys who did that, but it was you had to have a couple of guys that would look less straight military, because then the guys who looked military didn't draw any attention.
I got a question for you guys. Like, what's your take on the way the generals and everybody received Hegseth? I've heard different, I've had, friends of mine sending me stuff saying, oh, there's a general, criticizing him or whatever. I'm like, I'm just curious what you guys take.
Well, okay, this is my opinion. From what I've seen, there's a lot of officers who are poo-pooing the entire thing, mainly because they are part of the good old boy system, and they're used to how it used to be, and
they think they're untouchable.
Yeah, there's that too, but that doesn't work anymore. It has to change.
Absolutely.
So that's what's happening.
I think you're going to have a couple of different types. You're going to have the good old boys. You're going to have the guys who are going to rage against it and end up dismissed. And then you're going to have a tiny handful in there that are like, finally, thank God.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
They're there. They're with that many officers in the room. There is no way that at least 4 or 5 of those guys are going, oh God, standards. Thank God. Because those generals are old enough to remember what the Army was like before all of this shit.
Right. Right.
Anyway, let's see what the civilian world now thinks about all of this stuff.
In a room full of generals and admirals from around the world, Hegseth delivered a message.
The era of politically correct, overly sensitive, don't hurt anyone's feelings leadership ends right now.
What we saw was really unprecedented. I've covered the military for a couple of decades now, off and on, and I can't remember anything like this.
No.
You had the Secretary of Defense ordering all of these generals from all over the world.
That's his job.
Come to Quantico, outside DC, to listen to his vision for the military. These generals and admirals are used to taking orders. I think what's unusual about this is they were being lectured by the Defense Secretary on some very basic things.
We're going to cut our hair, shave our beards, and adhere to standards. And that's why today, at my direction, the era of unprofessional appearance is over. No more beardos.
Secretary Hegseth has been very aggressive in implementing his vision since arriving at the Defense Department months ago. You can see it in the trans ban, where they banned trans soldiers.
Yeah.
There have been efforts to abolish DEI. A surprising number of generals have been purged or fired.
It's nearly impossible to change a culture with the same people who helped create or even benefited from that culture.
Time to retire.
And I think this was another step in that direction. To sort of,
I
guess, take ownership of the force In summoning these generals to Washington, they're sending the message that these are my generals.
That's correct.
I made them all come to Washington to sit in an auditorium and listen to my speech.
That's exactly correct, though. They are his generals.
100%, yeah.
That's exactly what's going on.
But the word is 40% of the generals that are around now and 40% of the full birds are going to be gone.
The sergeants major as well. They'll be retired out because command sergeant major at that level is just as political as anything above colonel.
And that was on my list for Hegseth to get some ball busting, fighting sergeant majors, because you need those guys.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I was brought up by Sergeant Major Leon Guerrero, Command Sergeant Major.
That guy's a legend. Guerrero, everybody knows Guerrero.
Yeah, Kid became Sergeant Major of the Army. You know,
I remember you were under Kid.
Yeah, he was the I Corps Sergeant Major. I drove for him for 2 weeks, and when I caused that huge IG complaint because they screwed me out of my 4186th to go to Ranger Battalion.
Mm-hmm.
Sergeant Major Kid was like, he knew me. He's like, I know this guy. He literally I wasn't there for this. This was just told to me secondhand. He literally looks up and there's some lieutenant who failed airborne school who's going back for a retread. He goes, we're taking your airborne slot. We're giving it to Pop. That's what happened. Fuck
Hey,
him.
Colonel, can you give us any insight on the senior enlisted in the Air Force?
In terms of what?
The political atmosphere. What's that like among the senior enlisted?
Geez, I'm the wrong guy to ask that question.
You're the wrong guy. You didn't
I've been out of it. I retired 8 years ago.
Oh, okay.
Sure.
But I was actually, I was texting one of my former students who's an F-22 pilot currently. I'm like, what's he think of the Hegseth then?
Yeah.
And he was saying rock solid. He was saying that the feedback I got from him is identical to what you guys are saying, what I'm saying. Yeah. And he was saying it's great. And so, I mean, anecdotally, I think that's good to hear. I think that, just there was one thing I wanted to say, like dang, I'm losing my train of thought.
Alzheimer's.
You're in good company.
Alzheimer's.
Yeah.
I just think that, the epitome, that's what it was. The epitome of what I think, man, is I was so impressed when that Marine Lieutenant Colonel Stu Scheller stood up during Afghanistan and said, I want some fucking accountability. And I thought, like, that's the guy that should be a general.
Yeah.
He's the guy. And if you're talking about the 40% of guys that are going to boot, I'm like, they need to get more Stu Schellers, promoted into the general ranks, get rid of it's like we've become like the British Army, the Royal Army was in the Revolutionary War. They were losing because all their generals were appointed from nobility. They weren't picking their generals based on who were the best dudes to lead the people.
They had no battle generals.
Yes. And that's, I think, why one of the reasons the American Army was able to, win in the Revolutionary War. And, I mean, can you imagine if they had actual decent
real combat commanders?
Yes, it might have been a different outcome. And so anyway, you look at like guys like Patton that led us through World War II, that kicked ass. I mean, that's the kind of people we need to be generals, and they need to purge the force. I mean, like Colonel Murray said, we need to get out boot out all the fat asses that can't do the mission. I don't care if they're there for whatever reason, but I don't want woke bull crap there. I don't want fat asses there. No. It's like what Hegseth said. It's like, if I'm sending my son to be a pilot in the Air Force someday, I want him to be with the best possible pilot. I don't give a shit about anything other than that's the guy that's going to get him through combat situation and survive. And then, make it through whatever nastiness there is to follow if they have to bail out or whatever. And so I think we're all on the same page. It's just
one of the things we learned, and I wasn't in that box, but Pop was during the war in Iraq in particular, is there were no more lines. So you can't have somebody from S1 who's kind of, oh, I can't really pass my PT test, but I'm just a clerk. It'll be fine.
No.
Because you could be transiting between this station and that, get ambushed, and now you've got to fight.
Mm-hmm. Well, look
And
at
drag your buddy out of the way. The most famous example, of course, was Lori Piastowa standing over, what was her name? Jessica Lynch.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Jessica Lynch did nothing but go unconscious. Her friend Lori Piastowa emptied 3 M16s into the Iraqis before she was finally killed. And then Jessica Lynch was captured.
Wow.
And I know this because the Piastowa family is at Huachuca. And they full post pass when the army decided not to do anything for the Piastowa family. The commander at Huachuca went, fuck that. Lori Piastowa stood over her friend until she died. Her family gets post privileges.
Fuck yeah.
So
Watch Grunt Speak live every Tuesday and Thursday at 8 p.m. Eastern. And if you want to join Pop for Supporter Sundays, go to redonkulous.com/donate and make a monthly pledge. A link is in the Meat Gazer box.